Hi everyone, this is Migs from Sneaks and Ball PH, and today we have a detailed review on the Nike Zoom Freak 3. Before we get started, if you do like the video, please make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any comments, questions, or any suggestions for future videos, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below as well. Then I'll also be leaving a link to the SNBPH Sneaker Hunters Facebook group in the description box, so I do hope you can join us over there because that is a place where we talk about sneakers and basketball quite a bit. And it's also where we have the SNBPH Steel Cabinet, where I take some of the shoes that I no longer use, or some shoes that I've reviewed in the past, and put them up for bidding at way below market value. Then if you haven't already, I do hope you can subscribe to the channel because it really does help us out quite a lot. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the Nike Zoom Freak 3. The Nike Zoom Freak 3 is Giannis Antetokounmpo's third signature shoe with Nike, and right off the bat I am gonna say that I am super excited to play in these because it does feel like quite an upgrade from the Zoom Freak 2 and definitely from the Zoom Freak 1. I definitely wasn't the only person excited about the shoe because there was quite a bit of buzz ever since these leaked. I mean, for one, it does look like a pretty jarring shoe. It's like a running shoe, but it also looks like the KT7. But aside from that, a lot of people were also excited about the shoe because it seemed like it had a lot of performance upgrades, which we'll get into later. And lastly, a lot of people were excited just because of the fact that this is a relatively cheaper Nike basketball signature shoe that at the same time belonged to one of the greatest players in the NBA today. Giannis has been on an absolute tear in the playoffs, and I think he's pretty much put his playoff past behind him. I mean, he did just get back-to-back 40-point double-doubles, which hasn't really been done since LeBron and Shaq. One interesting thing though is these weren't actually debuted by Giannis, but instead they were debuted by Sneaker King himself, PJ Tucker. I do think the reason why Giannis hasn't pulled these out yet is because he's pretty comfortable with the Freak 2s. I mean, those were the shoes that he's been using for the whole season, and I guess that's just the two kinds of basketball players. You have players like PJ Tucker that can change their shoes no problem, and you have other players like Giannis that just want to have one shoe for the whole season and get really comfortable and used to that shoe. However, even if Giannis doesn't wear these throughout the NBA Finals this year, you can definitely bet that he'll be using these a lot next season, and with his performance through the season and these playoffs, it's definitely gonna be an exciting time to be a Bucks fan, a Giannis fan, or a fan of Giannis' shoes. Like I said a while ago though, I am super excited to play in these shoes because it does seem like a major upgrade from the first two Zoom Freak models. So to get into more detail on what those upgrades actually are, let's take a look at the tech specs. So starting off with the traction, you do have solid rubber all throughout, and then for the traction pattern itself, they made use of a lot of squiggly lines that actually looks like a fingerprint. This traction pattern is definitely multi-directional, so whether you're moving front to back or side to side, you'll be covered on all your movements. Then I did try these out on my wood floors here at home and it seemed pretty grippy, but my only concern so far is that there are certain sections of the outsole where the rubber is pretty close together, which might actually cause some dust to build up, but so far I haven't had any issues, so I'll definitely update everyone in the full performance review. Then for the durability on the outsole, the rubber grooves are a bit deep, however they are a bit thin and a little soft, so it's definitely just average or below average in terms of durability outdoors, especially since this launch colorway doesn't come with XDR, or what Nike calls their extra durable rubber. Then moving on to the cushion, I think this is definitely the biggest upgrade from the Zoom Freak 3 when you compare it to the Zoom Freak 1 and Zoom Freak 2. The Zoom Freak 1s did have barely any cushion to speak of, and then the Zoom Freak 2s had it slightly better, but with the Zoom Freak 3, surprisingly enough, it's hella bouncy. So for the cushion on the Zoom Freak 3, you do have a full-length foam midsole, and this foam is really soft, which leads me to believe that it could be Cushlon, but it also could just be a really soft injected Phylon. But regardless of what it is, it does feel super soft and feels comfy underfoot, and it does seem like it'll provide more than adequate impact protection. Then for the main star of the cushion, you do have these two large zoom pads here at the forefoot, and these two zoom pads are definitely pretty similar to the LeBron 17s, as well as the Nike Zoom BB NXT. I did like the way they were implemented on the LeBron 17s, then with the Zoom BB NXT it kinda felt a little tippy, so I didn't enjoy those. But with the Zoom Freak 3s, I think this is actually the best implementation of this, because it does feel super bouncy, but when you compare that dual pod setup to the LeBron 17s and the BB NXTs, it actually feels a lot more responsive and close to the ground. It was such a pleasant surprise putting my foot in the shoe for the first time and kind of bouncing around, because it definitely was way more cushion than I was expecting from a Giannis signature shoe. The whole midsole is also kind of sculpted in a way to make you play on your forefoot, and it's pretty similar to how running shoes are because you do have that slight slope from the heel to the forefoot, and you actually have a decoupled midfoot for a lot of mobility, and to add some more mobility you actually have a lot of flex grooves on the outsole as well. Then moving on to the materials, I do think this is also an upgrade, although a minor one, because for the materials that they used on the Zoom Freak 3, they're not really premium at all, but they are super soft and feel comfy on foot. For the base of the upper, you have a foam backed mesh, and this mesh doesn't actually seem too glued down, and it doesn't seem like it has a lot of plastic to it, so it does feel pretty soft, thin, and light. You also do have quite a few perforations on the foam that backs the mesh, so it's definitely gonna be a breathable shoe. Then moving on to the other materials, here at the midfoot and the ankle you have a synthetic leather. That definitely feels more like a cheap vinyl than a synthetic leather, but at least it does add some layers and character to the materials on the shoe, and it also feels pretty soft and smooth and nice to the touch. I think this material does change between the colorways because I think the black colorway has sort of a similar material to the Zoom Freak 2's, which I think is a little bit cheaper than this. So it's definitely interesting that they didn't use this material on the other colorway as well, because I do think this is the better option. Then for the tongue of the shoe, it is just a pretty basic textile tongue. Then you have a textile sock liner as well. You also have some nylon on the tongue tab as well as the heel tab. And lastly, you do have some rubbery plastic on that midfoot strap. The materials, like I said, are really soft and comfy on foot, and my only concern is that since this mesh is pretty thin and it's only backed by a single layer of foam, I do have some doubts with the durability here at the forefoot. Then moving on to fit and sizing, I did go through to size with the Zoom Freak 3, and it fits me perfectly well. I did go with my standard size 10, and that's what I also went with in the Zoom Freak 1 and Zoom Freak 2, so if you've had any of those shoes in the past, it fits pretty much the same. However, I do think this shoe can accommodate wide footers a little better, just because that foam back mesh upper is pretty thin and soft. So what I would recommend is that if you have a narrow foot or a normal width foot, go through to size. Then if you have a wide foot, you can either go through to size or up half a size. And before I forget, just like I said a while ago, you do have a midfoot strap, and I do have a high instep, so straps definitely don't fit me well. And since this does make use of those rubbery plastic straps that just attach on one side, it barely attaches to the Velcro when I put these on my feet. I honestly do think that this strap is pretty useless because the shoe fits well and the lockdown is good without it, but it is there on the shoe, so I guess my never-ending battle with midfoot straps continues. Then for the aesthetic details, this shoe is pretty interesting looking for sure. And here on the outsole, you do have light orange solid rubber. On the outsole as well, you can see that it is decoupled, and that split in the middle is actually in the shape of a V, which is definitely an interesting look, and I've actually never seen an outsole that looks quite like this. Then moving on to the midsole, that foam has this sort of salmon pink to it. And then here on the lateral side of the forefoot, you do have this sort of aqua blue marbled looking plastic piece, which is meant to provide support for the zoom unit on the lateral side. On that piece as well, you do have your Zoom Air branding, and the interesting thing is that the air actually is cut out, so you can actually see through to the zoom unit. Then slightly behind that, you actually have a little bit of a vent looking thingy where you can actually see the zoom unit again, and this does actually give me some Air Jordan 14 vent vibes. Then moving on to the upper, that foam back mesh is this light orange. Then you have more of that salmon pink here on the synthetic leather. You also have these aqua blue reverse Nike swooshes both on the lateral and medial side of the ankle. And then you actually have another Nike swoosh here at the base of the lacing, which is in gold. Then moving on to the midfoot strap, it is aqua blue and it has a bit of a marbled look to it. And on the strap as well, you have a lot of ridges. Then for the base of the strap, you have this pretty interesting fan which is made of like Nike swooshes. And then on the strap of the right shoe, you actually have some text that says Freak. Then for the last few aesthetic details, here on the tongue of the left shoe, you have Freak and a Nike swoosh. And then on the tongue on the right shoe, you have Giannis's logo. Then lastly, another interesting choice they made is that they made a brighter pink for the laces, which does kind of make the laces stand out, but it also makes it look a little incoherent. So it's definitely something I'm fine with, it's just I don't really understand that color choice. Then moving on to the overall aesthetics of the shoe, it definitely is a very jarring shoe because for one, the overall shape looks like the KD7 and certain Nike running shoes made a baby, and the overall color scheme is also pretty interesting because it's a mix of orange, salmon pink, a little bit of aqua, and these bright pink laces. It might definitely take some time to grow on me, and I really don't like the midsole sculpt as well as the look of the strap, but for everything else on the shoe, at least in terms of aesthetics, I think it's okay. The most important thing though, since this is a basketball shoe, is if it performs well, and from an early impression standpoint, I am super excited because I think these will perform really well. Then for the price, the Nike Zoom Freak 3 retails for 6,795 pesos here in the Philippines or $120 US. I do really like that even with all of the upgrades that the shoe has over the Zoom Freak 2 and the Zoom Freak 1, Nike was still able to keep that price down to the 120 range. And given the shoes that it's competing with at this price range, I think it definitely has a good shot of beating some of them, just because I think the forefoot cushion, that traction, and that fit will be amazing. Of course, only time will tell if these can dethrone some of them because there are some really good shoes at this price. So definitely stay tuned for when I update you all with a full performance review. I did get these over at the Nike app and they did ship pretty fast, and I think they are still available in pretty much all sizes. You can also get them from the Nike website, and I am pretty sure that soon enough they'll also be in Nike stores. Then for those in the US, for some weird reason they aren't releasing in July, but you will be able to get your hands on these sometime in August. So there you have it guys, that was my detailed review on the Nike Zoom Freak 3. Once again, if you haven't already yet, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon for notifications. It would help us out a lot. Here at Sneaks and Ball, PH.